Hello and welcome to today's tutorial. Today we will be looking at the Mishelka blanket, the stitches and techniques we used to make this beautiful blanket. So this project is worked in panels, so you won't need hook with extension. The standard size hook would be enough, and if you have classical crochet hook without any bumps in the middle, you can use that one as well without having to use a special Tunisian crochet hook. So we will be working with in panels. So we will start the project at the bottom and work these squares, joining the squares on top of each other, and then we will be working from left to right, joining the panels along these lines, and so on. So for my blanket, there's 9 squares, the panels are 9 squares tall, and I worked 9 panels across, but the size is customizable. So what I would recommend you is to check the written instructions on the blog if you would like to adjust the size of your blanket, and you can recalculate it via the gauge that is there. Just to quickly mention the tools and materials, as I mentioned, I would use 4.5mm Tunisian crochet hook, but you can also use 4.5 classic crochet hook. And I use sheep cheese stone wash for my project in 2 colors. So I use the rose quartz as color A, and then I'll use the tourmaline as color B. So we will first start with a slip knot, and we chain 25. So we place the slip knot on the hook, and we will work chains. So we yarn over and pull through, that's chain 1, yarn over, pull through, chain 2, and so on until you have 25 chains. For row number 1, we will turn our chains and work into the back bumps of your chain stitches. So we'll insert the hook from front to back, yarn over and pull up a loop, and you will repeat that for each chain, and you will have increasing number of loops on your hook. So you should chain 25, so you should end up with 25 loops on your hook. Once you've got all your loops on the hook, which will be 25, we will work our return pass. Return pass in Tunisian crochet is worked as yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2, and you will repeat yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning of your row. So you will just keep on repeating yarn over, pull through 2 until you have 1 loop left on your hook. For row number 2, you will work Tunisian Simple Stitch across, finishing with an end stitch. So Tunisian Simple Stitch is worked by inserting the hook from right to left under the front vertical bar, yarn over and pull up a loop. You will repeat that into each stitch across up to the very last stitch, where we do something ever so slightly different. I'm now at the end of row number 2. I've got 1 more Tunisian Simple Stitch to work, and then an end stitch. So the end stitch is worked under both of the strands of yarn of the very last stitch. I mean this strand on the right and one on the left. So we insert the hook under both of these, yarn over and pull up a loop. Again, we still have 25 loops on our hook. We will then work standard return pass, which is chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning of the row. For rows number 3 to 21, you will be repeating row number 2. So the first square is worked in solid color, in color A, and you will be repeating row number 2 of Tunisian Simple Stitch across. And then I will meet you at the end of row return pass of row 21 when you have last 2 loops left on your hook, where we will be changing color to color B. So just to recap, each square will be 25 stitches wide, 21 rows long, and we will be joining squares on top of each other for the length of our project, and then we will be joining panels on the right side. I have now worked a few more rows in color A, so let's pretend that this would be the end of the first square. I've got last 2 stitches on my hook. I will then bring color B, place the loop on the hook and pull through 2. Okay, I'm going to then start working rows of Tunisian Simple Stitch in color B. So we've got 5 rows in Tunisian Simple Stitch in color B before we start working the color work, the heart pattern. So I will work a few rows of Tunisian Simple Stitch in color B, and I'll meet you back on row number 6 of the second square, where we start working the heart motif or the heart color work section. So once you worked the 5 rows in color B, 1 2 3 4 5, we will be on a row number 6. So we will work 12 Tunisian Simple Stitches in color B, then we will join color A for 1 stitch in color A, and then 12 stitches in color B. And on each consecutive row we will be adding 1 stitch on each side in color A, and there will be 1 less stitch in color B on each side up to this section where there is 13 stitches. The heart is 13 stitches wide. Then we will maintain the width of 13 stitches in color A, and we will then decrease for the top of the heart. So first we will work 12 stitches in color B. So we already have 1 loop on the hook, so this counts as the first stitch in color B. 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 and 12. We'll then add back our color A. So we'll go insert the hook as for Tunisian Simple Stitch, place the loop on your hook and pull through. We will then go back to color B. So at this point we can carry over the strand of yarn. We'll then insert into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through in color B, and we will continue working in color B all the way up to the end of the row, working end stitch in color B. When then we will continue with standard return pass. So we'll work standard return pass up to the stitch in color A. When the stitch in color A is the second hook, is the second loop from the hook. So now we've got 1 loop in color B and the second loop is in color A. This is where we change color back to A for the 1 stitch. So we will work 1 return a yarn over pull through 2 in color A, and then we will pick up color B again, and we will continue working yarn over pull through 2 in color B. So for the next row, so this will be the 7th row of the second square, we will work Tunisian Simple Stitches in color B. So there will be a total of 11 stitches before we change color to A. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 stitches. So we will then be widening the heart on each side. We'll be adding 1 stitch in color A in both sides. So we'll pick up color A, insert as for Tunisian Simple Stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then there is 1 stitch already in color A, and then we will add 1 on the left. At this stage you can still carry over the color B. I like to carry over the B for maximum of 3 stitches, so this is the maximum that I would normally carry over, and then on the consecutive row I will show you how to join the second color or color B on the other side as well. So for now I'm going to keep working from 1 ball of yarn from one side, and on the consecutive row you can join another ball of yarn in the same color, or you can work from the same ball of yarn from the inside and outside, whichever way you prefer. Okay, so again we will be working standard return pass for this row as well, up to the point in color B, up to the point where the second stitch from the hook is in color A. To this point we'll drop color B, pick up color A, yarn over, pull through 2. This time we will do that 3 times because we had 3 stitches in color A. Go back to color B and continue working. Like so. So for the next row we will have 5 stitches in color A and 10 stitches on each side in color B, and I will be using both ends of the yarn ball from the inside and outside. That's my preferred method. So this is the last stitch on the right side. I will then get the color A, work 5 Tunisian Simple Stitches in color A. Okay, and once I work these 5 stitches in color A, I will not go back using the same strand of color B, but I will be joining the other side of the yarn ball, similarly as when we joined the color A. When we started the color work section, I like to place the loop, we insert for the next Tunisian Simple Stitch, place the loop on the hook and pull through. I like to also cross the working yarn over the other 2 yarns at the strands of yarn at the back, just to secure it in place, and continue working from this end all the way. So what we basically started doing is we started the beginning of the heart motif working stranded color work. So as you can see, we were carrying over the color B over the color A. So we worked a few rows of stranded color work, and now we are working in tarsia. So there will be no extra floats, extra strands of yarn at the back of your work. And you will continue adding stitches in color A on each side, and then the number of stitches in color B on each side will be reducing by 1 each consecutive row, up to the point when you will have 13 stitches in color A across. you will work 3 rows of 13 stitches in color A, and then I'll meet you back at the top of the heart to see how we decrease the number of stitches in color A. Welcome back. So I worked this section widening the heart and then working 3 rows even with 13 stitches across. And now I'm going to be, for the next 2 rows, I'm going to be working the top of the heart motif. So we will work 6 Tunisian Simple Stitches, but including the first loop, you will have a total of 7 stitches or 7 loops on your hook. So you will work you will work the first stitch where you got color A, you will now work in color B. You will then pick up color A, work for 5 stitches, so 5 Tunisian Simple Stitches in color A, 2, 3, 4 and 5. You will then pick up color B, work 1 Tunisian Simple Stitch in color B, go back to color A and work 5 Tunisian Simple Stitches in color A again. And again, the last stitch will now be worked, that was previously in color A, will be worked in color B. So we will then pick up the strands of yarn in color B on the other side of your color work section, work Tunisian Simple Stitch and finish working in color B. So now when you look at the back of the work, you can actually see more clearly where we had a little bit of stranded color work at the beginning, then intarsia. So you will see that those color changes are really nice along the edges of the heart motif. Then you've got one larger strand here on the top that we just crossed 5 Tunisian Simple Stitches in color A, but we will actually deal with this in the consecutive row. So now we will work a standard return pass and changing color as previously. Once you get to the point in your project where the second stitch from the hook is in the other color, you will then pick up the other color. So in this case, this is color A. Then go back to color B, work 1 stitch in color B, go back to color A again, work 5 times yarn over, pull through to in color A and back to color B. Again, you are crossing 5 stitches in color A. So in this case, just a word of caution, try not to pull this too tight, otherwise you will pucker your work, so it will not sit nicely flat. So once you work few of these hard motifs, you'll kind of get a feel for how long it needs to be. You don't want this to be too loose or too tight, so really need to find just a middle way for the strands to be not too tight and not too loose. In the next row, we will be decreasing the number of stitches in color A on each side, so you will then work only in the middle 3 stitches in color A. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. We'll be working first in color B and then 1 more, so you will end up with total of 2, 4, 6, 8 stitches, 7 Tunisian Simple Stitches and 8 loops in total in color B. Now you pick up color A, so you will work first stitch as normal, Tunisian Simple, and then now we're going to trap the floats at the back of your work. So you will insert the hook as for Tunisian Simple Stitch, but you will also work under both of the loops, the long loops or the long floats in color B. yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you work normal Tunisian simple stitch into the loop as normal. So what it does, this creates an extra loop crossing over the loose floats, and this will trap them. So instead of float spanning 5 stitches, you trapped it in the middle with that extra loop. Now you will pick up color B, work 3 stitches in color B, go back to color A, work 3 Tunisian simple stitches in color A, 3, and then back to color B on the other side of your heart motif and work as normal. And standard return pass as before, with changing colors as I showed you before. Now we're getting to the point where the second stitch is in color A. We will yarn over, pull through 2, 3 times in color A, back to color B, do the same, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 times in color B, back to color A, and back to color B after 3 stitches. So for the next row and for the next 5 rows, actually we will work in color B before joining back again to color A. So similarly to when we were joining the color on the first square, we had last 2 loops on the hook and we yarn over, pull through with the new color, which was color B. We will do exactly the same after 5 rows in color B. The last row, the last 2 loops on the return pass of the 5th row will be yarn over, pull through with color A, and this is what you will be repeating for the length of your project. You will work these squares of 21 rows and 25 stitches across in color, even in color A, and then working the color work squares in color B and color A, and you will then repeat this and you will build the first panel working one square after the other. So what I'm going to show you now, once you will finish all your squares for the first panel and you will be happy with the length of your project, you will then bind off the top. So I'm going to show you how to bind off the top of the project. I'm going to show you in color B. However, if you are following the pattern, you will be binding off in color A because the last square will be in color A. So just for this tutorial and just for the demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you how to do it in color B. So you will be working the next stitch as for Tunisian simple stitch. You will yarn over and pull up a loop. However, you will then also pull it through the loop on the hook, and you would be repeating this for each stitch of your last row. And as you can see, you are binding off the stitches and the top edge looks very neat, nice, and it kind of looks like a chain. So the top of the project will be matching the bottom of the project. And like so, and you will continue for the rest of your stitches of the last square, including the end stitch. You will then cut your yarn and pull it through, and that's how you will finish the first panel. We start the second panel by joining the yarn onto the first panel. So we need to first find the chain stitch, which is on the edge, which would be this one. We insert the hook through the back loop, and then through the loop which is at the back of your work. So each stitch on the edge has got a front, back loop, and then there is another loop at the back. So we will be working through these two at the back. This will secure the edge. We add color B, pull through, and then we chain 25. Once we chain 25, we will then turn the work around, and we will pick up stitches in the back bumps of your chain stitches. So you've got one already on the hook. You will go into the next back bump, yarn over, pull up a loop, and you will repeat this for every chain of the foundation chain of the second panel. So I'm now going to work into the very last chain, or the first chain that we actually made when we started chaining. So we yarn over, pull up a loop. We've got 25 loops on our hook, and now we need to join this first row into the stitch on the right edge of the first panel. So again, we are going to go through the two loops here, and then one on the back. We yarn over, pull up a loop. So now we have 26 loops. However, we only want to have 25 loops so that the stitch work and the color work works. So we are going to reduce the stitch by 1. So normally on your return pass you would yarn over and pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2 all the way. However, when we are joining panels, we need to first reduce the number of stitches. So we will start yarn over and pull through 2 from the beginning. The first is decrease, so this will help us to reduce the number of stitches, and then we will continue with yarn over, pull through 2 all the way. Okay, so that was the first row of our second panel. We will then continue working the color work square. So in total, each color work square has got 5 rows in color B. Then we start the heart motif as we did per first panel, and then we've got 5 more rows of color B only, followed by a square in color A. So I'm going to work the color work square, and I'll meet you back when we join yarn for the plain square in color A. As you can see, I have now completed the first square of the second panel. So this panel started with a color work square with a heart, and I will now need to start the second square for this panel, which will be done in the solid color. So this would be solid color in color A, which is the light pink. So I will change my yarn. So I place the loop on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2, and I will then start working Tunisian Simple Stitch into each stitch of the last row of the first square. I will work into every stitch all the way. So because the square is 25 stitches wide, I should have 25 loops on my hook. And we are also joining the square. So this is the last stitch, and then I need to join it on the square next to it. So I will again work through the side and through the back loop, through both of these loops, yarn over, pull up a loop. So this will be the 26th loop, and now I'm going to start the return pass. So I will yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 all the way. So I will, after this row 1 of square 2, I will continue working the square in solid color. When I finish the square in solid color, I will then again join color B and work the square. So I will alternate the one with the color work followed by the solid all the way to the top of my project, and then I will bind off this panel. So I will see you in the next part where I show you how to work the third panel, and then after that you will alternate the second and the third panel for the width of your project. So we are now starting panel number 3. So as per panel 2, we will be first joining onto the chains and then joining the third panel to the second panel through the 2 loops of the edge stitches on the right. So first we need to locate the edge stitch of the chain, which is here, and then we need to work through the side loop, and also we want to capture the back loop, which is here. You will then place, after you inserted the hook through the 2 loops of the chains, you will then add the color A, and you would chain 25. We then work into the back bumps of the chain stitches, adding loops 1 pair, 1 back bump. Okay, we are now on the last loop, which is or chain, which is the one that we joined onto the blanket or the project. Now we are going to find the side loop and the back loop of row number 1. So this would be my row number 1. This is the side loop and here is the back loop. I'm going to insert the hook through both of these, yarn over and pull up a loop. So now I have 26 loops on my hook. So I'm going to decrease 1 stitch, so yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 2 all the way. So this is a similar process to how we started panel number 2, except for in panel number 2 we started with color B, and the first square was color work square with a hard motif, while the first square for panel number 3 is the solid square in color A. And from here you will basically continue working the first square in the solid color, where you will be joining onto the right edge of panel number 2. And then once you complete that, you will then go on to working the color work square with your hard motif, and you will be alternating squares all the way to the top where you will bind off your row. And after this you will continue repeating the panel number 2 and 3 for the desired width of the project. So for my sample I had 9 panels and I had 9 squares in a panel, but if you prefer to make the blanket smaller or larger, you can adjust the number of squares per panel and also the number of panels.